Call to order the City Council Committee on Health and Environmental Affairs. And pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. I'll have the secretary call the roll.
Here.
Counsel Cathy Viveiros, Counsel Joseph Camara,
Here.
Chairman Stephen Camara.
Here. The purpose of this meeting is to follow up on a resolution that the council adopted unanimously. I will read the resolution so that everyone's aware of the scope of the meeting.
Point of order.
Yes.
Counsel Cathy Viveiros is here.
The meeting has been called, the roll call has been called, and the reading of the resolution is to proceed. Whereas it is a regular practice for all public utilities contracts for the sale of municipal utilities to come before the Fall River City Council for its review and consideration. And whereas now it is realized by the City Council and the general public that the City of Fall River has contracted to sell water to a Burrillville, Rhode Island energy company without prior knowledge of the City Council. And whereas the Wartapper Water Board passed this contract of sale on a 2-to-1 vote on August 17th, 2017. And whereas this contractual agreement constitutes a potential for litigation by third parties, now therefore be it resolved that the City Council Committee on Health and Environmental Affairs convene a meeting and invite members of the Wartapper Water Board, the Corporation Council, representatives of the Burrillville Board of Selectmen, representatives of Invenergy Corporation, and Ben Water and Heavy Transport to discuss this contract and service, to ensure that the City of Fall River will not be a co-defendant in any litigation, and to assure this council that through this contract, the City of Fall River will not be environmentally or economically responsible in any way for providing water for what may be an environmentally damaging activity in the nearby state of Rhode Island. So the meeting is being held as a result of the passage of that resolution. And for council's information, I'm going to provide 2 documents, and I think before doing that, I'll just give you the scope of the process. The first part of the process will be an invitation to the city representatives, city administration, corporation council, the water sewer department, in this case being represented by Terry Sullivan, and any others from the city government that might be coming forward. Secondly, we'll invite any city residents that might want to discuss with city officials their presentation. And then thirdly, since there are out-of-town interest in this issue, they will be invited for the third portion of the meeting to come and discuss with both city administration representatives as well as local community representation and those from other places other than Fall River. There was not a sign-up sheet because my method of operating is to have a conversation, and we have an expanded conference table that will hopefully accommodate most, if not all, people that wish to participate. If there are not enough seats at the table, then we might have to have you come at a future time or just casually sit. There are a few extra chairs around. So I would ask the city administration to bring its team to the table, and if you could just occupy the seats on one side, either side. You can pick
Left or right?
You can pick left or right, whatever side you choose. But just yeah. And for the sake of everyone in the audience, the locals know who you are, but we'll have you introduce yourselves so that everyone else in this vast audience will know who you are. So, Corporation Counsel Macey, first, to introduce yourself just by name at this point.
I'm Joseph Macey. I'm the Corporation Counsel for the City of Fall River.
Thank you.
Cathy Viveiros, City Administrator, Fall River.
Terry Sullivan, Administrator of Community Utilities, Fall River.
Okay, and just so that the council is fully aware, I'm going to give to the council, and I will also give a copy to the clerk, and then if you all need your own copy, This is the copy of the Wartapper Water Board meeting agenda, which was scheduled for Thursday, August 17th, at which date the decision was made by the Wartapper Water Board, I understand, although I'm also now distributing a copy of the Wartapper Water Board minutes of that meeting of August 17th, and a copy for the clerk for the records, and available to the rest of you if you need a copy. And we'll open it up to presentation first by the administration, then we'll open it up to questions from the council.
Excuse me, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I don't have
Okay,
a question.
I'm going to have the administration first
Could I
present.
get a point of order, please?
Sure, point of order.
Thank you. Counsel Capaceros' name was called out in a roll call. Mark not here, but he's clearly in the audience. I don't understand why a counsel who's a member of committee has never sat at the committee meeting, has never seen that before.
Okay, I'll give you a little background on that.
Thank you.
The original makeup of the committee was myself, you, and Councilor Raymond Mitchell.
Correct.
Because I wanted to have a full committee represented, I consulted with the city clerk and with the council president about how to have a three-person committee. I also spoke to Councilor Raymond Mitchell, a member of this committee, who was willing to step down at the time I spoke with him, although at the time I spoke with him, I said, I don't know if you need to resign or step down, because I later found out that the council president has the authority to appoint committees, as you know as a former council president, and I know as a former council president. So Councilor Kadim then, in fact, did make a reappointment of this committee, including me, you, and Councilor Cavaceres. As this meeting was about to convene, Councilor Cavaceres indicated to me that he resigned from being a member of this committee.
Oh.
So whether or not he's...
Two-member committee?
So it's now a two-member, it's a three-member committee.
Who's the other members?
But the third member has currently resigned. And so we're proceeding because there is a quorum, and we're going to have the city administrator make a presentation, along with the council, Corporation Council, and Mr. Sullivan from representing the Water Department. Mr. Macey? you-
Well, let me be as direct and as simple about this matter as I can. I know it's been before the council before. I'm the Corporation Counsel for the city of Fall River. I represent the city of Fall River. And as their attorney, I will tell you that, in my opinion, the contingent water supply agreement is valid, contractually enforceable, and I will say, in my opinion, it's fair, but my opinion as to its fairness doesn't count. But my opinion as to its efficacy, its adequacy, and its legality is that it is all of the above. It was appropriately adopted, it was appropriately signed, and it's in full force and effect. It affects only the city of Fall River. It is payable only to the city of Fall River, maybe through the Water Board. And it is contingent on a number of things. One is the need for Ben to have a backup water supply. It's contingent on them buying the water and paying for it. And as I understand it, our involvement and our contract, and I repeat, I believe it's legal, is 2 or 3 procedural steps from whatever the problems are with the plant, which I'll call a plant, in Rhode Island. So my position on behalf of the city of Fall River is we have a valid contract.
And anything to add, Mrs. Viveiros? or Mr.
Yes, Mr.
Sullivan?
Chairman, and members of the committee. So at the time that this agreement was being considered, the administration, specifically Mayor Correa, did speak with Mr. Sullivan, and he can speak directly to the actual terms of the agreement. But the mayor was of the opinion, as he, and I was able to confirm with him again today, was of the opinion that this was a contingent water supply, that did come with a fixed guaranteed annual payment amount of $25,000 that would come to the city, regardless of whether or not any water was in fact purchased from the city, and that it was an opportunity to provide a revenue to the water department from a source outside the city, and any opportunity that we have to bring revenues into the city from outside the city generally bestows a benefit to the Fall River ratepayers, because it is a revenue that contributes to the support and the operation of the department that, again, is not being borne by our Fall River ratepayers within the community. So it seemed to be a good opportunity to bring in an additional source of revenue, and the mayor felt that there was a possibility that the project would not move forward. There's certainly a great many environmental hurdles that have to be overcome for this project to move forward. There were a great many local issues in Rhode Island that would have to be satisfied, environmental and otherwise, before the project could move forward. And this $25,000 annual payment would be paid to the city regardless of whether or not the project did move forward, and constituted a revenue source to the city that would be beneficial to the Fall River ratepayers, and hence the contract was entered into. And I'll defer to Mr. Sullivan for the particulars.
I don't have a lot to add. The consideration of the agreement was in consideration of our ratepayers. Certainly, with the multitude of state and federal regulations that we've had to comply with, our water and sewer rates have increased significantly. Certainly, Chairperson Camara has identified that during multiple budget hearings and concerns about the rate increases. So we continuously look for alternative rates of revenue to try to assist our ratepayers in minimizing the rates that need to be increased. With that consideration, I mean, at the last meeting that I sat in the crowd, there was a lot of misinformation put forward about the water department. The volume of water is planned to be up to 18,000 gallons a day on average, with a maximum of 88,000 gallons per day. There was a letter written to the Herald News that we're giving away all of our water. At the previous meeting tonight, I told the previous committee that we have 4 million gallons per day of water available to sell. So certainly 18,000 or 88,000 of the periodic maximum is a minimal amount to us. With complaints made about the potential truck traffic, where the agreement identifies usually 0 to 3 trucks per day, but if the 88,000 periodic maximum were used, it could be up to 11 trucks per day. Destruction of all our roads was discussed at that last council meeting. I mean, at the wastewater treatment plant, we currently have 10 to 15 trucks per day going out of that plant to truck our liquid sludge out to Rhode Island. So that amount of truck traffic is not a concern for the roads. It happens. We do sell water out of the water treatment plant location now to purveyors to fill pools or for landscapers, so there is some traffic. It's the same point that we would be selling this water from. But ultimately, it was the interest of our ratepayers, who have had increasing water bills for many, many years, to try to find any alternative revenue sources to minimize those rate increases to our customers.
Thank you. And before opening up the questions, I just have, again, just a clarification point. The revised Wartapper Water Board meeting agenda, which I distributed and here, is that the agenda under which the Wartapper Water Board operated on August 17th?
Yes.
Were there other items on this agenda?
No.
No. Okay. And the minutes that I distributed, are these the complete minutes of the meeting of August
Yes.
17th? Okay. I understood that the contract was entered into at the August 17th meeting. Is that correct or incorrect?
It was approved by the Water Board at the August 17th meeting, followed by a serious time to get signatures, as with any agreement that we have.
Okay. And what item on the agenda is the item that relates to the contract?
Number 8, contingent water supply.
Contingent water supply, okay. And on the agenda, therefore, it would be also item number 8?
Yes,
And when the Corporation Counsel referred to Ben, he was referring to the entity that you've entered the contract with?
Yes.
Which is Ben Water and Heavy Transport Corp.
yes.
And I understand there is a representative from that corporation here. I'm going to ask you to join us at the table. There may or may not be questions for you, but I think it would be important for, all parties that are connected to the proposal. If you could just take a seat near Mr. Sullivan, and we can pose questions. I'm going to have you also just sign in on this sign-up sheet. And just ask you to print your name and for the record, sir, if you just give your name and address for the record. And just use a microphone if there's one there.
My name is Mark Russo. I'm an attorney. I represent Ben Water for the purposes of this committee hearing. My offices are at 55 Pine Street, Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Russo.
We need to waive the rules.
And Robert. I don't think, I know that the city council operates under a waiving of the rules, but I don't think that's a rule of any subcommittee. So I'm not going to ask any waiving of rules for any participant at this meeting. But before proceeding to invite Fall River residents to the table, Councilor Joseph Camara, do you have any questions at this point?
No, not at all.
Okay. And I would ask if there are any Fall River residents who would like to present testimony or to question our city representatives or Mr. Russo, if they could come to the table and occupy the seats adjacent to Mr. Joseph Camara. You can just join right here. Joe, you can just take the seat between the two. And if you would just print your name and address. Yep, there's more seats at the end of the table. Okay, and for the record, we'll have it printed on that sheet that I just gave you, but give you time to write your name and print your name. And then if you could just introduce yourself and give your address for the record. We'll begin with the young lady next to Joe.
My name's Sabrina Davis, and I live on 196 Irving Street, Fall River, Mass.
Joe Cavallo, 575 Eastern Avenue, Fall River.
And Kevin Costa at 226 Davis Street in Fall River.
Erica Scott, 187 Plymouth Street, Fall River. Amy Blanchett, 724 2nd Street, Fall River.
Ian Tompkins, 450 Cambridge Street, Fall River.
Okay, and we'll give you each necessary time. We ask you all to keep it within a reasonable amount of time. We don't have a time frame, an absolute clock that's going to be used. So please feel free to make your point. Sabrina, we'll begin with you. And be sure the microphone's switched on, which means toward you.
Okay.
And then just speak it close to it.
All right.
Yes,
Is it on? Because I can't really hear a difference.
I believe it is. Yep.
Okay.
Just need to get it close.
So the fact of the matter is that I don't feel represented by this water deal. I had no idea this deal was going on. I feel like our residents of Fall River should have been given ample opportunity before this deal went through to weigh in on this matter, and I had no idea that this deal was going down. And the fact of the matter is that environmental justice communities such as ours have been the target by big corporate polluters historically because they have had great success in taking advantage of us, which is absolutely wrong, and we shouldn't be contributing it to helping them pollute other areas by contributing them the water they need. There are other ways to build revenue in this city than selling out to polluters. We're trying to get away from that. I've been talking with my coworker Rachel Mulroy. She's our environmental organizer at the Coalition for Social Justice, where I work. And she suggested two things: that the Fall River City Council file as late interveners with the Rhode Island Energy Facility Sitting Board, and two, that the Fall River City Council should submit a letter of disapproval of the water deal to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. These two things would bring the City Council into the loop regarding Energy's request for the fossil fuel power station in Burnsville, Rhode Island, and would cost us nothing. There's plenty of ways that we can save money and generate revenue by investing in clean energy rather than sticking with out-of-date fossil fuels that negatively impact our health and our environment. And make no mistake, just because this plant isn't going into our community doesn't mean it won't impact us in the future. And another option that we could travel down is to push hard to become a green community, like New Bedford and Brockton, which has already benefited by access to grant money and the cutting of municipal energy costs. So I hope that City Council will look into these options and do go through with getting yourself in the loops. That way we can actually have some more input into this whole process, which I sincerely hope doesn't go through. I think it's a bad idea. I testified at the last time this came up, and like I said before, we're part of RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, as a state. And as a state, we've pledged ourselves from moving away from fossil fuels, and for us to do this deal with Rhode Island flies in the face of what we already swore as a state to move away from. So I just hope that you guys will take what I had to say in consideration.
Thank you, Sabrina. Joseph?
Thank you. Well, I certainly want to echo Sabrina's comments about intervener status, especially in view of it doesn't cost anything, number one. Number two, then if the City Council files as an intervener, anything that happens on that project, the notice would be sent to the City Council here to be made aware of that. One of the questions I think people need to ask themselves is, out of all the communities in Rhode Island, the only one that agreed to sell water contingently was Johnston, Rhode Island, which has a terrible, absolutely abysmal environmental record. And my understanding is that the process whereby they approved the water being sold was actually similar to how a two-lane road is going to go across a Cookashan River rail trail here. So kind of under the radar, surreptitiously, if you will, that's how it was done. So it's kind of like, ask yourself the question, why did all of those communities in Rhode Island say no to giving water as a contingency plan to Burrillville, to a compressor station? And especially still, as I still remain the president of the Coalition for Responsible Siting of LNG facilities, and it took us 8 years to send Weaver's Cove packing, and packing they did go. Of course, it was sold to another despicable person, but that's a topic for another discussion. I do want to mention something only because Terry Sullivan brought it up about sludge being brought to Rhode Island. There was a time here, because I've got a fantastic memory, that the city of Fall River was going to bring sludge to the landfill. If you remember that, Mr. Sullivan. You do.
Mr. Cavallo, though, we need to stick to the topic on the agenda.
Well, I bring that up because, you know, a lot of things are said and then later on are proven not to be so, or environmentally disastrous to bring sludge to the dump. So it's kind of like selling water to Burrville is not a good idea for a fossil fuel plant. When, in fact, as Ms. Davis had mentioned, this state has a commitment to defossilize, if you will, our approach to energy projects.
Thank you, Mr. Cavallo. Kevin?
I just wanted to preface my brief comments by thanking, well, the people here, but also the people who are serving our city. I know most of you, if not all, and I know you've dedicated years, if not, I'd say decades of your life to the good of the city. So that's very, very much appreciated. And it's an honor to have the opportunity to actually contribute, a comment or two for your consideration. So thank you. Couple of things. There's a boundary between Rhode Island and us. But in reality, that boundary it's kind of imaginary as well. In Boston, they say the South Shore when they talk about us. And in Rhode Island, they know we're the South Coast. So we're really part of one community. And, and it seems like it's an overwhelming thing in Rhode Island. And they've come through for us in the past. And I fear that if we don't come through for them in the future, and now, that they can very well, that would leave a bad taste in their mouth, and justifiably so. And I wouldn't want to undermine our relationships with our great neighbors and friends, because we're really one community. The idea of structural damage to the roads, I don't know. I don't have an actual assessment of that. But, that conceivably that's one, potential cost that could be, a real cost, and then there might even be others. And I know the corporate counsel, the judge, a Brown graduate, but also he was discussing things as the corporate counsel, defending the city on a contract. And I suspect there's someone who can conceivably have other interests protecting in other parties who might, make arguments that would try to hold Fall River, liable for something. And I would be disappointed in our corporate counsel if he said that was the case, because that would open the possibility that, conceding that it is the case. And that's not his job. He did a great job in what he did. But I fear that someone from somewhere else might make another argument that could be potentially problematic. And the other thing, and this I guess Cathy would know about, the difference between sunk and variable costs. This is like a 40-year plant. Who knows if this is going to be worth it to anybody with the new technologies and developments. But once the sunk cost once it's built, when it comes to continuing operation of the plant, they don't even care if it was worth building. You rent out your house, even though it's worth $100,000, even though you paid $200,000 for it. You've lost money, but you'll do everything to just keep renting it out, just to lose less money than you would have otherwise, because the sunk costs don't even figure in the calculation. So that's not directly necessarily our costs, but it could be that this is a boondoggle, like maybe even those cooling towers across the river. Money not well spent, even for the company. And the last but not least, this young woman, her comments were other than mine, and I think it's not unrelated to her age. Who's going to look back 40 years, a decade from now and say this is the right decision? They're going to have a different perspective. We're going to be in a different world. And that world could be very, very bad, like California wildfires, and much, much worse. And there's something else. It could be something very, very different if people organize and do the right thing. And I think, this thing about the environment sounds like it's too big picture, too much into the future for us to care about. But actually, it's not. And I would love to be able to, in a decade now, feel that we did the right thing. And I'm not perfect that I know I just say what the right thing is, but I would, hand to you, that we consider as a city that perspective is important. And I want us all to be proud of the city, not just now, but in the future as well. So thank you for your patience with me. It's appreciated.
Erica?
Is this picking me up?
You just bring the mic closer to you?
Is that better?
Yeah, tap it.
I don't think it's on.
Make sure the switch is turned up toward you.
Is that?
There you go.
I'd love to see where this technology is in 40 years. Maybe we'll have Google voice detectors or something. I just had a quick question before I read some comments. So the water board meeting that approved this contract was on August 17th, and statements that were made today, I believe, said that the contract was executed a few days after. Is that correct?
Whenever,
my question-
whenever it's dated, that's when it was executed.
So my question relates to how could it be, a meeting was held August 17th. The actual contract right here that's signed by Mayor Jazel Correa and by Jeffrey Benn, President of Ben Water, the effective date is likewise August 17th. But then there's an email that I obtained via public record request from Water Board Clerk on August 25th. So, 7 or 8 days later, saying the signed contingent water supply agreement documents are in my office on the round table. I will be here until at least 5:30 today or anytime after 8 a.m. on Monday. So it's a Friday. Call me anytime, blah, 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 if the doors are locked. So it seems like the contract actually was not signed and executed until the 25th.
I can answer.
Yeah. Can you
Like
clarify that for
every
me?
agreement, every contract, a board votes. Over the course of 50 years, these contracts now usually engender multiple signatures of people that are not at that meeting.
2 signatures.
Normally, the water board votes, they'll sign, then we have to distribute it to other parties for the final signatures to go on.
I see.
Common happens with every
Okay.
agreement.
All right. But the effective date is August 17th, so it was basically backdated, just so I can
To
understand.
the date of the vote.
Okay. All right. But we haven't received any payments as of today, correct? The payments will not be made until 2018, if
March of 2018 is the
March of
first payment.
2018.
Yes.
So we have from August 17 to March of 18, and there's no payments being received.
No annual reservation payment.
So are there any payments, we received to date any payments, period?
No.
Thank you. So, thank you very much to the committee for everyone being here. I'm glad that this meeting was called to order, and I also welcome our allies from Rhode Island and other surrounding communities for being here. I appreciate it. I'm respectfully asking the committee today for 2 things. First, I'm asking you and the entire city council to join with the 35 other cities in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut who have passed resolutions against Invenergy's proposed $1 billion fracked gas and diesel oil burning plant in Burrillville.
Just to clarify, did you say 1 billion?
Correct.
1 billion.
That would be, I guess, the sunk cost, as our resident economist would refer to it as. Second, I'm asking for the city council to please make a motion for late intervener status in the application process. Now, I've heard from a number of Fall River residents who are very concerned about this, but they don't understand why the town of Burrillville doesn't just pull the permits. So, I researched this, and to be clear, it's actually not the town or the city that issues the permits for this plant. It's the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board, the EFSB. They issue all of the energy facility siting licenses in the state. So intervener status, as a few other folks have mentioned, would give city council formal stakeholder status and also trigger a public hearing held by the EFSB here in our city to give us, the residents of Fall River, the opportunity to weigh in. Intervener status is not taking a position. An intervener actually may oppose, may support, or may remain neutral. It really is just the smart way to protect our city. The city of Charlestown recently applied and was accepted as a late intervener. And when the news broke that the Narragansett Indian tribe, whose reservation is within the borders of the town of Charleston, will, like our city, be a backup water supplier, contingent water supplier. I see many similarities between us and Charlestown. Charlestown similarly applied late and was approved. Why? Well, just like in Fall River, the deal to truck their drinking water across the state was done in secret. And like in Fall River, their community is largely opposed to the deal. And I realized that this deal was out of the city council's hands. I have filed 2 state public records requests and a federal Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA request, specifically to obtain documents related to this water deal. I requested documents from 6 city employees. To date, the city has only given me documents from one employee, Mr. Sullivan. I have also filed an appeal with the state to compel the Korea administration to follow the law and release the records that the people of Fall River deserve to access. I did, however, receive documents showing that the administration was secretly working on this deal since at least April 12th. Now, tonight I heard that this is a deal that only affects Fall River. Well, on April 12th, there was an email from Corporation Counsel Macey saying, just to ensure there is no misunderstanding, the agreement referenced in this email is not for Tiverton, but a separate community. If I'm correct, there is no need for further clarification or confirmation. And Attorney David Sullivan, who's a partner at Darrow Everett, a law firm that we're paying for external legal fees, replied and said, you're correct. The water supply is for a power plant in Rhode Island. I think to patch it. So from the very get-go, that was the earliest email or record that I received. From the get-go, it was clear this is about Rhode Island. It's not about Fall River. So let's call it what it is. All right. I'm disturbed that the administration appears to have intentionally covered up and redacted our city's involvement. Why do I say this? Well, on September 25th, an email from Attorney Sullivan to Attorney Macey and CC'd Mr. Sullivan and Paul Furland. Quote, gents, as you know, the Ben Water Supply Agreement, the Contingent Water Supply Agreement, references the power plant in Burrillville, Rhode Island. It is my understanding that there will be some filings made with the Energy Facilities Site Board this week that will disclose the fact that Ben has secured Fall River as an additional contingent water source of supply relative to that project. This will be a public filing. I wanted to give you a heads up in that regard, end quote. The city has twice refused to provide me with Corporation Counsel Macey or Paul Furland's emails, so we cannot know how the city actually responded to that email, but we do know, however, that the public filing mentioned in this email specifically redacted our city's name. So our involvement was covered up. Mr. Sullivan's emails do provide a window, a slight window, on the immense amount of pressure that was put on our city to acquiesce to this deal behind closed doors without letting the city council or the public know. May 31st, Attorney Sullivan to Mr. Terry Sullivan, quote, guys, Mark Russo tells me that he needs to have his client meet with someone from the city this week or he risks losing the deal. Maybe we can use Friday at 11 to meet with Mark and his client to placate them. June 1st, the next day, Attorney Sullivan sends an edited contract to Terry Sullivan, quote, in an effort to warm you up to this water supply agreement. June 22nd, Attorney Sullivan emailed Mark Russo, attorney for Invenergy, quote, and this was included in the emails I received because Terry Sullivan was quoted, or CC'd. Terry is relying on my recommendation that they accept the contract. We only need 48 hours notice to put this before the board and get it approved. The anticipation is that we should be able to have this approved sometime next week, assuming Terry is comfortable with the terms. It appears that Terry, however, was not comfortable. He replied in an email, I continue to dislike the unnecessary burdens put on the city. I further dislike the fact that the annual lump sum payment is now turned to a month-to-month, which we learned starts in March. August 14th, Attorney Sullivan emailed Corporate Counsel Macey and Terry Sullivan, quote, if the Water Board can approve this contract this week, then it will agree to a 3-year contract with 3 renewals. He reminded me that the water is for a power plant that cannot get approval to be constructed or come online until a primary and a contingent water supply contract are in place. He said that his client is under tremendous pressure to get a contract with a water source. So 3 days later, the contract was approved at a meeting of the Wartapper Water Board. It was not on the original agenda. It was added to a revised agenda, despite being in the works for at least 5 months. And it was listed as its own agenda item, quote, contingent water agreement. It was not listed under contracts, where 2 other contracts were listed. There was no draft contract provided, as was the case with 2 other contracts on the agenda. I share this because you, the committee, should be aware that I have filed an open meeting law complaint, which is public, based on this contract not being listed as such, and based on the failure to provide a draft contract for review. The city has done its job, as Mr. Costa stated. Attorney or corporate counsel, you've done your job, and you have denied the violation occurred, which is the routine answer. Now, surprisingly, the city's claim denial actually did not come from corporate counsel, but rather, I received it in an email from a project specialist in the Sewer Commission, followed by a hard copy letter that I have that appears to bear a rubber stamp signature from Terry Sullivan. Regardless of who it comes from, it is from the city, and currently the complaint is in the Commonwealth's hands. Assistant Attorney General Carrie Kilcoyne is investigating whether a violation occurred because I stated I was unsatisfied with the city's denial. So that investigation is underway. To wrap it up, as a Fall River resident, I'm left with more questions than answers at every turn. Two things, however, remain consistently clear. One, what I perceive as a total, unacceptable lack of transparency from the Correa administration for months around this deal. Two, people in our community do not want this power plant, and they do not want the water deal. We know that water is life, and it should not be for sale for fossil fuel extraction. The town of Burrillville, the state of Rhode Island, and neighboring Masson communities do not support it. The city of Fall River should not be in the business of selling our city's major natural resources plant. To do so is a slap in the face to our city residents and the allies who stood up to protect our city from the proposed LNG plant. Rhode Island stood with us then. Now it is our turn to stand up for ourselves and stand with our neighbors. I'm hoping that I can count on the City Council to support a resolution against the plant and a motion for late intervenor status to protect our rights. Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain questions from the city, but I do want to have the city residents complete their statement. So Amy, and pass the mic.
Hello. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and to speak, and thank you for meeting with us. So I agree with everything that my colleagues, I guess you could call you, have already said. Like Erin had just said, I also have a lot of questions. I mean, if it was only 18,000 gallons of water when we have millions, potentially for sale, why was this done without so much as a notice even going out to the public? $25,000 is nothing. That's not even enough to cover one policeman's salary. So, I mean, for this deal that's been made, I mean, what are we really getting out of this? We just gave, this potential power plant power. They needed it, you just heard it. They needed a contingent water source, so there you go. Now we're going to be the contingent water source for this power plant, which is the pollution from this power plant is going to affect us. It's going to come down this way. So the potential lawsuits the city will face will be much more than $25,000, and Judge, I'm sure you know that,
I'm not worried.
Well, you
Just,
should, I would be.
Ms. Blanchett, you have the floor. There's not to be any interruption. So let's stay focused on comments as they're being made. Continue, Ms.
Yep.
Blanchett.
So that's what concerns me. I'm not in agreement with this at all. Back when I was at BCC, I'd actually written an essay on fracking, and I actually had consulted Mr. Cavallo, because who doesn't when it comes to anything to do with the environment? And I had already known quite a bit about it, but I learned more so than I ever could have imagined. And I'm just disgusted that you put this deal on the table and that we're giving a contingent water source to the possibility of this plant opening. No further comments.
Thank you. And Ian?
Hi, Ian Tompkins. First, while I agree with the purpose of this meeting, due to some of the open meeting law potential violations, and as pointed out by Joe Camara, we have a 2-member, 3-member body here today. I kind of disagree with the way that this meeting is being held, but I'm going to comment on the water deal as I perceive it. So some of the comments stated by Kevin, we'll be looking back in 10, 20, 30, 40 years on this. Another similar thing that Fall River has done in the past. We were supposed to have, what, a 20 or 40-year dump that lasted less than half a decade. I feel like by selling our water in this manner, we're setting the precedent for future water sales, future multi-year large water sales to go in a similar manner. And I would, like this sale to be done in a way that, is in alignment with the way that, with the public interests. That way all future major water sales will have to be done in a similar way so that we don't end up with a dump that's, a 40-year Wartapper Pond drained in, 5 to 10 years. That said, what else? I know that some of the money going towards this is going to, help with the way that water is being paid for by the taxpayers. But it's my belief that you're not supposed to sell water. You're supposed to pay for it through public taxation and give it to the community. It's not supposed to be for business use unless you've had an economist look into this and fully analyze the externalities of selling our water to, Rhode Island. As some people have pointed out, there's potential legal fees that may come into play, and there's environmental damage, which the cost hasn't been analyzed. Even though this is a remote area that it's being sold to, it still eventually may affect Fall River, and we may be responsible for those damages. I think that's about it.
Okay, and just 2 points of clarification. The $25,000 fee that begins in March, is that a monthly fee or is it an annual fee?
Annual.
Annual fee. Okay, and just another point of clarification. I thought that Mr. Russo was representing Bend Water and Heavy Transport, but some reference was made to you're representing Clear River Energy Center. Who do you represent?
I represent the project. I also represent Ben. I got involved in the project to try to find water sources for the project.
So you represent both Ben and Clear River?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And I think Counsel Macey has a question.
I don't have a question. I just did respond to Ms. Scott's request, and I got the letter back undeliverable. So there was a problem with the address, and I have it. I think we got it back a couple of days ago.
Okay. So, the residents of Fall River have had their presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the city representatives to any of the presenters? No. Okay, and as I understand it, the 2 requests that are coming forward to us are, one, that we sign in as a late intervener, which would not present a situation to us as being either pro or con the clean energy plant. It would just mean that we would be put on a list to get future notices so that we would be kept in the loop about how this project moves forward. And then the second request is that we do go on record as opposing the construction of the Clear Water plant. Is that, in summary, what was suggested by those of you? Okay. And Councilor Camara, do you have any questions at this time?
No, it's very clear.
Okay. So I would excuse you because I think there's probably more than one person that wants to come down to make presentation. It doesn't preclude your coming back if necessary. So if any of you want to come back, you've already signed in, so that's fine. So I would excuse you and thank you for being here. I won't excuse the city folks, though. So thank you. And now I would entertain an opportunity for any residents from communities other than Fall River. Well, let me, before I say that, are there any other Fall River residents that would like to say anything about anything at this time? Okay, not seeing anyone else from Fall River, I would say then any other folks from any other community that might want to come down, and please do. And I believe the sign-up sheet is at that end. Please print your name and address for the record. We can start here on the left. There are extra chairs. You can bring up a chair.
My address at email. It should be on the letter that was requested. I don't know why it's returned as undeliverable. It's very curious.
When I send it back,
You gonna stay back there, Joe?
Thank you.
There are a few movable chairs. There's a couple of green chairs over there. You can bring those forward. And I'm going to ask you all to be as brief as possible. I know that many of you have been committed to this project for many years, so you probably have a whole lot of stuff you'd like to say. But we'll begin, and just so that we have your name, even though your name is signed in, if you haven't signed in yet, you can sign that sheet before that gentleman passes it down. And we're going to start with you, if I will. I want to be sure everyone's here that needs to be here. Hopefully you all have a seat so you can be comfortable. And just, if you could, start just with your first name.
Sally.
Sally, okay. And Sally, if you could, why don't you begin what it is that you'd like to say?
Sure, Mike.
Hold on. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, it's all being printed. Okay, give your full name, Sally.
I didn't sign that yet.
Okay.
Give it back this way.
Okay.
Sally Manzella. I live in Rhode Island.
And you can begin by speaking.
Okay. I'll be very brief. What I want to say is that I'd like you to entertain the possibility that there is a greater prerogative than giving a small amount of money back to your ratepayers. And that is the environment which we all share. The toxic chemicals, whether they're in our water or in our air, do not know where the state line is. Okay? They will go wherever they're going to go. They will have effects on our environment for years to come. I ask you to think about future generations. It's really easy when you're talking about something like a power plant and billions of dollars to forget the real cost. The real cost is not only to our environment, but to our future generations. They're going to ask us how we were accountable for the decisions that are being made today. And if you want to, you can divorce yourself from this decision and saying, but we're only selling water to Ben. We're not doing anything about the power plant. Yes, you are. You're enabling them to fire up and start a very destructive and totally outdated technology. Totally outdated. Never mind 40 years, it's outdated now. If you pay attention to any of the news, you'll see the World Bank has already pulled all its money from fossil fuel investments. City after city, state after country are pulling back from fossil fuels. This is a boondoggle. This is a mistake. It's a draconian decision, and I ask you to think about the generations in advance rather than just your ratepayers. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And certainly thank you for...
And your name, sir.
Sure, for doing this, this hearing. My name is Paul Rosselli, 665 Maureen Circle, Mapleville, Rhode Island.
We'll have addresses, just give your name for the record for now.
I'm the president of the Burrellville Land Trust and have steeped myself in this project for a couple of years. With the chair's favor, I'd like to ask a few questions of what the Water Board actually knew or knows about the project. And some of them may be rhetorical, but they may illustrate a little bit about how Invenergy can actually change water use to satisfy their own needs. So 18,000 gallons of water per day, I think that's what I heard. Is that correct? That they were going to, that Fall River would provide as a backup water supply?
Yes, on
18,000.
average.
So if I do the math, and someone please correct me, it's, if I'm wrong, it's about 750 gallons per hour. In other words, the turbines, what they're suggesting is that these, and this is a way to illustrate just how much water is required, 750 gallons per hour, or 12.5 gallons per minute, about what you would get out of 2 garden hoses. Now, I don't know if you've seen these electric turbines, but excuse me when I say this, but these are big-ass turbines. These are huge things. This is a combined cycle power plant using what's called a General Electric H-class turbine. Now, I'm no expert on any of this except what I read. And when I read that, to actually generate what they're requiring, what they say they're going to generate, could take up to about 256 gallons per minute. So even though you say that there's 18,000 gallons of water per day, you may be on the hook for a lot more. This is a combined cycle power plant where the water comes in, cools the turbines, goes to a steam generator, generates electricity. This is an enormous amount of water. You may not be the backup plan. You may be the primary plan. And as such,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, can we just get a point of clarification on the point he's making right now? Mr. Sullivan, what is the maximum amount that we're gonna sell these people in the contract?
Maximum is 88,000 gallons per day.
88,000 gallons
Maximum.
of water per day.
That's the most that we will be on the hook.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay,
That's right.
thank you.
So please, someone do the math, and I'm not going to do it.
And I'm
in
gonna
front
ask
of
my
you.
colleague, I would like you to speak so through the microphone so the public also and those on TV can hear. It's not about you talking louder. It's about this meeting is being telecast, so talking loud is not gonna help.
You should sit here
No, no,
because I'm
that's okay,
done.
that's okay, I'm listening. When I speak, I'll go.
88,000 gallons of water a day is a lot of water. At 8,000 gallons per truck, it's 22 truck trips a day. That's back and forth. Mr. Chair, I would like to show a map, if I can, and then I'll end my comments. If somebody can grab that for me.
Usually
So,
you can.
well, you can do that, Ray. So in your resolution dated October 24th, you state, or
You
the,
can just bring it right here and put it right in front of me.
the,
In front of you, you won't be able to see
People have
it.
seen enough of me, but go ahead. Or else behind me.
well, we'll make this work, I promise. There you go. So I want to give you some idea of just what is meant by in your resolution that there could be some environmentally damaging activity in the nearby area. And where it says Invenergy project, that's the power plant right there. Give you some idea where we are. In the far left is Connecticut, far top, Douglas State Forest, that's Massachusetts, that's the Commonwealth. The Burrillville Land Trust owns 214 acres of land. These little white squares, rectangles that surround the power plant, that's our property. That's property that we have acquired over the last 16 years. Sweat, toil, money from taxpayers all throughout Rhode Island have helped to purchase that property and acquire that property. If you're wondering just what or who or where that power plant would affect, that's what it would impact. Also, there's Pulaski George Washington Park, 4,000 acres of land. There's the Buck Hill Management Area, upper left-hand corner, 1777. Douglas, it's on and on for thousands of acres of land that's impacted. So, Mr. Chairman and committee members, if you're wondering just what that power plant would impact, if you don't have a concept, there it is right there in black and white and yellow and green. It's my property. It's the Burrillville Land Trust property, a nonprofit private land trust in the town of Burrillville of all volunteers. That's where your water is going. Your water is going to go to a power plant that's going to generate about a billion watts of electricity, with most of that water going up the smokestacks. So, Mr. Chair, I applaud you and the committee for writing the resolution. I'm trying to put some, if you will, meat on the bones and give exactly where this power plant is going to go and what the impact is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. Next.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Ray Trank. I'm a member of the Burrillville Town Council. Let's start off by saying that I don't want to advise you or speak to you about your contractual obligations. I wouldn't do that. That's up to the city of Fall River. What I did come to do is to thank you for looking into this issue and to talk to you about the overwhelming opposition to this power plant in Burrillville. Politically speaking, 3 members of the council were recently elected, all no power plant candidates, and another member was recently appointed to fill a vacancy, the next highest vote getter, another no power plant candidate. the overwhelming majority of Burrillville residents are against the power plant. You heard earlier from some of your residents about the lack of local control, and that is an issue that the Burrillville Town Council and the Burrillville Town Government cannot make a decision on this power plant. It is being made by the EFSB. What I would ask is that you join the 31 cities and towns in Rhode Island, the additional towns in both Massachusetts and Connecticut, and over 100 organizations and individuals involved in our environment. You saw the green map last time we were here, that we had the 8-foot-high Rhode Island map. I think it was one of your colleagues that asked if that was a life-size version of Rhode Island. But that is a way that many communities have joined with us in opposition to the power plant by doing resolutions, either their own or to sign on to our resolution and be against the fossil fuel power plant in the woods. Just to finish, I would say that the people of Burrillville welcome your invitation to come here. There are a lot of people who are more versed than I am. The information is available. We have the EFSB also as a resource. And the fact of the matter is, the town of Burrillville, the people of Burrillville, are opposed to this power plant. And any help you can give us, we would most gratefully appreciate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ray.
My name is Robert Woods, and I'm from Burrillville as well. I want to thank you for allowing us to come here. This power plant, again, is going to affect the way of life in Burrillville for many, many years, and it'll never be able to replace what it's taken away. Being invited here the last time several of us spoke, and being invited again tonight gives us hope. And you know, we talk a lot about the environment, and there's a lot of emotion going on because it affects us directly. But really why we're here is that we're all required to do something. You know, as a father, as a worker, as a council person, you know, as attorneys, we're all required to do something. And so we're here tonight looking at what our requirements are and what your requirements were as attorneys working for the town. Now, I don't know if they're required to go out and find water for you, or to find projects for you, or find out how to make money for you. You know, I think you hire them to make sure that everything is legal and they follow all the rules and all the procedures that are necessary. I think the fact that, you know, we just learned tonight of all these emails, I actually had opportunity to read all of them earlier. And as well as I watched the video over and over again. I'm on the planning board in my town. I've worked for the town on different occasions other than that. You know, I know what transparency is. And I think, you know, when you have these boards, they're required to do something. And you know, I don't know what your procedures are, but if their procedures, if the procedure was for them to come before the town council and they didn't, red flags have to be raised. There's a lot of things that I've looked at. You know, when there was a presentation at that board meeting, they were talking about $30,000 a year, not $25,000 a year. There's a lot of inconsistencies on the draft and the agreement. And so, you know, there's a lot of words that come to, I'm not an attorney when I'm sitting here with attorneys, but I'm going to throw these words out. You know, I think there's some collusion. I think there's some misrepresentations. I think there's even possible fraudulent misrepresentation.
I'm going to let the gentleman continue his presentation.
And this is my opinion, okay? And I think something like that has to be looked at. When you start reading these emails and seeing all this back stuff, and you, sir, you know, you said at one of the meetings that we were here that there's a backstory to this thing. And yes, there is a backstory to this thing. And I think you know the backstory probably even better than we do.
I know that this city has done everything above board, without collusion, absolutely legally. And I will tell you, sir, that I resent you coming and taking advantage of the good nature of our chairman to address an issue which I understand is of significant importance to the people of Burrillville and sit here and insult the people in Fall River who did this. Mr. Sullivan, the chairman of the board, that was a free, open, publicized meeting that anybody could have gone to. The fact that people don't like the result or may be surprised is no evidence of collusion, none, and I assure you there was none, and I want you to know that as a representative of the city of Fall River, I accept everybody's comments here as well-meaning in the best interests of Burrillville, but I resent your comments, and I think they're out of order.
Very well taken, sir. We're here tonight, Lord, because I'm not insulted by you, sir, but I am offended, okay, that Fall River is selling water to our town, for this power plant, that affects my home, my family, and Generation Farms all around that area. So we're here tonight looking at something that needs a better look at.
Thank you, Robert. Next, and you just pass the mic down because there's only one mic on that table, so if it doesn't.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. My name is Ben Fortier. I'm a former resident of Burrillville, and I'm currently a resident of Somerset. I've been following this story in regards to Invenergy and the power plant for about a year now, and it's just, I'm not an expert. I'm a video production coordinator. I work in media, and I'm not a scientist. I'm not an environmentalist, but I can tell you right now that this deal is not good. It's not good for our future generations. It's not good for our current generation. This plan, as you learn more about it, as you do your research and your due diligence, it's filled with shady deals, things that are not transparent 100%. And I'm not saying it's this city in particular, but it's how the whole process is going about. My parents back in the 80s, we grew up in a small town in Burrillville. It was a village, and they tried to suppress heavy trucking that was going through that village that was being used to excavate sand and granite and things like that. And these trucks were causing damage to the infrastructure. They were causing a safety concern. And here we are, we're just right back at it. And I feel like if this deal was to go through, it would just be spitting in the face of all the hard work that they went through. Please do not be an agent of progress for this. We can be on the right side of history. We appreciate what you all do for the town. We appreciate what you all do for your city. This affects not only Fall River, not only Somerset, not only Burrillville, but it affects the whole region. We need to be progressive and not regressive. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. Good here. Good evening. My name is Taylor Bedesso. I'm from Johnston, Rhode Island. There's really two overarching points I want to talk about, and they definitely relate to each other. One is water, the history of this water shell game, as I call it, and the other is how the applicant has operated throughout these last 2 years concerning water. So the initial water proposal, what the applicant proposed was to break open two, at that time, 14-year quart-sealed wells that were MTBE contaminated wells in Pasco. The reason for this, as far as I know, is because it was physically the closest source of water to the proposal at that time. The applicant proposed breaking these. Keep in mind, MTBE is a gasoline additive. It's carcinogenic. It leaked. There was a gas station where this gasoline leaked into the surface water. People started smelling gasoline while showering. People got sick. This hit the community hard. This was personal. In my eyes, it's nothing but blatant disregard for the community, really. This event happened less than 2 decades ago. People got really sick. A simple internet query with the name of the village and the word water would bring up this story. Like I said, it took Rhode Island Superior Court to seal these wells. Those wells have been sealed for 14 years before being proposed broken open for the cooling water for this project. So obviously that had a lot of backlash, a lot of public outcry. That was finally tabled. The applicant then went to Harrisville, which was a neighboring village within Burrillville. Harrisville, to their credit, they held public meeting where, you know, they voted a resounding no in front of the public. Keep in mind also, please, that since the MTBE proposal was tabled, every single source of water from then on out is potable water, is drinking water. So they went to Harrisville, like I said. Harrisville, to their credit, voted no. They then went to the city of Woonsocket. The city of Woonsocket actually had a public hearing where their own residents got to voice their concerns about this water sale. Residents overwhelmingly were not for that. And to their credit, Woonsocket, the town council of Woonsocket, also voted no. The same night of the Woonsocket public vote, the no vote, there was what I'll call clandestine deal that happened in the city of Johnston. The very same night, the majority of the residents of Rhode Island were literally duped. There was a big show of force, packed auditorium, news outlets, everyone was there in Woonsocket for this no vote. And on the very same night was the vote in Johnston. I was there in Johnston. I'm a Johnston resident. I was not allowed inside the building that night. There was no public input for that vote at all. That night of that vote, it happened to be the town hall was filled to capacity with union members that somehow knew to be there, but legitimate residents such as I couldn't even get in the building. So that clandestine yes vote went down. That vote is Johnston selling water via Providence. It's actually Providence Water under we'll call it outdated, a law that was written in 1915 under the straight up guise of ordinary and domestic water use. As you know, the Johnston water source is currently being challenged in Superior Court as well. So we keep on rolling. The next water source in this show game was
Just to keep it on track, we don't need a full history of every community's
sir.
opposition. If you can summarize,
Absolutely,
you know,
sorry.
18 communities
You got it.
went through this process rather than naming them all.
Yeah, I'm wrapping up. I just want to paint the picture of how this whole thing was operated. So anyways, what happened was the Narragansett Indian tribe was approached. The Narragansett Indian tribe themselves contest that contract because NIT became involved, the town of Charleston became involved. Charleston filed and was accepted as intervener, something maybe this town could consider doing. It gives, as you guys know now, you know, no favor either way for or against this plan. It gives you guys a seat at the table. Seeing how this is operated up until now, with intervener status, there is no information that will be glossed over. You guys will know everything. To do with the NIT thing, also a letter from the chief suggested that maybe Westerly could be a source of the water. So it's just another between Pasco, Harrisville, Water, Johnston, Charleston, Westerly, and now Fall River. This application was filed in August of 2015, and we are still playing this game. Meanwhile, as all this was going on, that green map was completed where 32 out of 39, over 82% of the state, you know, resolved against it. The only other thing I'd like to bring up is the MO thing. Like I said, the blatant disregard, be it Woonsocket, Johnston, the NIT deal with the Indians in Charleston, now Fall River. It seems at every turn the applicant has done everything in their power so that the general public isn't made aware of any of this info. The town councils in all these towns have been skirted. In Woonsocket, there was a lot of outrage with that council because they were in the dark, so on and so forth. So between the glaring lack of transparency and the blatant disregard for the communities, not to mention this is a environmental and health affairs committee. Every single major environmental agency in Rhode Island resounding no against this thing. And I think the writing is on the wall, like other people have said, you know, we're either on the right side of history with this thing or the wrong side of history. This thing is controversial now in the year 2017. Just think if we go through this 40-year cycle of this plant, how nonsensical this proposal will sound in 40 years. Thanks for the time, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Taylor. Next. And I just want to give you a sense of things. I promised my colleague that we would have a meeting that would last about an hour and a half. So we're approaching in 15 minutes the full hour and a half, so proceed.
Yeah, my name is Ken Putnam Jr. I spoke here once before. You're gonna have to put up with me because I just had a root canal 2 weeks ago and I was in there again today. But I wanted to tell you is this here. You're not only gonna have 18 trucks come through here, you're gonna double that because they come back and forth. So that's double. Now, the other big thing with that is you have to realize this here is in the middle of the winter. God forbid one of them trucks slips, goes near a pond or something like that, and the pollution from that there, not only death or whatever from the people around it, for the kind of money that they want to give you is totally ridiculous. The other thing I'd like to tell you is that this is your land up there on the other side of Wallam Lake. That's Douglas Forest up there. That's your people up there. You got to stand up for them also. This pollution is going to travel 31 miles. It's going to pollute that beautiful lake up there. I mentioned that to you before, how clean that water was and how nice it was for the poor handicapped people there, right? You've got to do everything in your power to protect the people of your state and our state as well. I mean, it isn't just this money. And the other thing I really want to bring up is you got to remember, money, what the hell is that? When you go 6 feet under, what does that money mean? Not a darn thing. You got to take care of your family, your friends, your neighbors, and that's what's the most important. And like I said before, you guys have got the authority here to do that because people put you in charge of that. And that's what we look forward to. We look forward in our state, and we're looking for it in your state. And I want to tell you that we've been fighting this for over 2 years. And I have only missed maybe 2 or 3, and most of these other people have too, because I was out of town or something. Why do you think that all them towns listened to us and said, absolutely not? Because they knew that this, and they were way the hell away, excuse my language, they were way away from us like you folks are. But they definitely said, no, we don't want this here. That's going to pollute everything. That's going to, Providence Water, you name it. I told you this before, Providence Water supplies 60% of the water in Rhode Island, and that's going to ruin that. Providence Water got their pond, or lake, I should say. They bored up the towns and moved the people out to create that, to create the water. You people here are going to want this water in 20 years or more. Look at the place you guys have got here. I mean, can you imagine if you didn't have enough water, if somebody wanted to build condo or something like that, or a bigger organization here, you're going to want that water for the future. So I would tell you is to hang on to it and hang on, take care of your citizens. And I really appreciate, I wasn't going to come tonight, but this is so darn important that I said, to hell with this here. If I can speak, I'm going to come. So thank you very much for letting us come and speak.
Thank you, Ken.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lauren Nidell. I live in Gloucester, Rhode Island, which is a neighboring town of Burrville. There's a couple of things I just want to bring out. And sometimes we look at things as this, that, and we don't make the connection. We helped you folks stop the LNG tank in Fall River, in your water. And it's a fossil fuel project. Every time we enable the fossil fuel companies, like Invenergy, like right, all of them, Spectra, like Enbridge, we are encouraging additional fossil fuel infrastructure. We create a fracked gas power plant, $1 billion worth, if not, it's going to cost more than $1 billion by the time it actually gets through. Then you have all this fracked gas. Do you think that the infrastructure is going to end there? They're going to need to build out that infrastructure in order to have a place to bring in the fracked gas. Do you think that Fall River will then, at one point or another, be subjected to being a host of another fossil fuel infrastructure? Do you think that another LNG infrastructure proposal won't be on the horizon if there's additional fossil fuel infrastructure projects in your neighboring state. You have to look at it as opposed to it's just water going into another state as what is the repercussions of additional fossil fuel infrastructure, and think globally and what is this impact down the road for Fall River? It's very likely that with additional fossil fuel infrastructure, especially something of this magnitude, that they're gonna be looking at Fall River, especially since you're hosting the water, as a potential for additional fossil fuel infrastructure in your backyard. And that is something to consider, because you can't say at that point, well, we endorsed the power plant in Burrville, and now we're gonna say no LNG terminal in Fall River? It's just something to really consider, take to heart, and keep in mind that we're not looking at one project. We're looking at massive amount of additional fossil fuel infrastructure with the power plant that's proposed in Burrville.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Mozinski. I'm from Douglas, Massachusetts. And as you can see from the map, we're right over the line. And that's why we're here supporting the folks in Burrville. I also want to mention that I'm president of the Metacomet Land Trust, 15 communities in south central Massachusetts. So, Chairman Camara and committee members, I'm here to speak to you on this important issue of selling Fall River's North Wartapper Pond Municipal Water to Invenergy, an out-of-state corporation proposing to construct a fracked gas and diesel-fired power plant in Burrville, Rhode Island. I, too, am a resident of the Commonwealth. As I said, I live in Douglas, the Massachusetts town that borders both Connecticut and Rhode Island. The Clear River Energy Center proposed by Invenergy is literally down the road, and consequently, we are upwind from the site. Yet we have no jurisdiction regarding the siting of this plant. Just like the folks in Burrville have no ability to say no because this plant is being cited by the Energy Facility Siting Board. So our Board of Selectmen and our elected state senator have both submitted letters to Rhode Island's Energy Facility Siting Board supporting the town of Burrville in its efforts to stop the siting of the power plant. And I am going to leave copies of those two letters for the record. Please know that Burrville is already home to Ocean State Power, a facility that burns natural gas. While it may have looked benign, what the Fall River Water Board has done is aided a corporation that will greatly impact border towns like Douglas in Massachusetts with the increased truck traffic and harmful emissions. The proposed fossil fuel burning plant, expecting to generate 900 to 1,200 megawatts of electricity, will add significant emissions that will impact our air quality and impede our ability to reach our goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Massachusetts and all of New England. And did you know that the Commonwealth has spent millions of dollars, as Paul mentioned, in Rhode Island over numerous decades to conserve acres and acres of wonderful forests and parks that will be impacted by this proposed power plant? In fact, if we put the acreage together with the forest, wildlife management areas, and parks in Connecticut and Rhode Island, it totals 25 square miles of protected open space in the tri-state area. It is an incredible resource that must be protected from further development and pollution. I know South Coast communities like Fall River are working hard to advance renewable energy sources like solar and offshore wind so that we can have reliable, renewable energy sources and so we can decrease harmful fossil fuel emissions. I know South Coast communities like Fall River are as concerned about reducing the impacts of climate change that make our coastal cities and towns most vulnerable. But this proposed plant counters those attempts. It will add to greenhouse gas emissions in Rhode Island and consequently in neighboring Massachusetts. Water is a resource we cannot live without. To sell municipal potable water to a private corporation that will in turn use it to generate electricity that they are not able to sell at future energy sales auctions because it isn't needed, that will generate pollution harmful to all of us and our children's children, and that could ultimately be sold to foreign markets, is absolutely not in the best interest of the residents of Fall River, of the citizens of the Commonwealth, or of all of New England. I ask this committee to rise up and lead us forward, become our water keepers. I question the transparency by which this contract was executed. Return to the full council and find a way to have this contract declared null and void. If that is not possible, as a friend of the great city of Fall River, I implore you to make sure that this contract is left to expire and never be renewed. Thank you for this opportunity and wish you all a happy holiday.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, my name's Alicia Ann Kelly, and I live in North Situate. Chair, is it allowed to ask Mr. Russo a couple of questions? Okay. So, who did you represent? Because I've seen you a lot. I saw you in Woonsocket when I asked you 6 questions. What municipalities did you represent Invenergy for, and what ones did you represent Ben Water for?
As I said to the chair, I got involved in the project because they had to find water supplies. As you know, the local authorities didn't want to supply the project. So I've worked in Johnston, I've worked in Woonsocket, I've worked in Fall River. I think that's about it.
When did you represent Invenergy, and when did you represent Ben Water?
Ben Waters had a contract with Invenergy for quite some time to do all the transport logistics and the contingent. Actually, Ben is the contingent water supply for the project. So I've worked with them since that contract was entered into, but I don't know the date.
I'm not quite sure that answered my question, but we'll go on. So I know a lot about water, not as much as everyone else, I think, but I do have a unique story. So if I do get a little redundant, I'm sorry. I was a citizen of Woonsocket when the water deal was presented to the city. I also am now and have been in the past fourth generation Situatonian. So the primary water source is, of course, very precious to me, and so that's why we continue on this path. So in Woonsocket, the city council was approached, not the water department, which I think is a very important thing to say here. When I believe Mr. Macey said that everything was done with transparency, I'm not here to discuss that. What I am here to discuss is that our mayor did have a press release about this water deal. We were given the opportunity to speak to the city council in a city council meeting. I did ask Mr. Russo 6 questions during that meeting, and I really appreciated that opportunity. And that's not what happened in Johnston. What happened in Johnston was a completely different story, as so many of us have spoken about. And I think Fall River falls in between those two. Woonsocket was transparent. Woonsocket allowed members of the community to speak, and their council was in full, well, as close to transparent as possible in the water deals and did vote no. Johnston, on the other hand, last minute scraped together. We found out more information after the fact, and I think Fall River really is in the middle here. So what can Fall River do? I do agree that intervenership could be a possibility. It would give you more access to information, and I would encourage that. I'm not sure where the council will lie on that. Green Map is also passing a resolution opposing the siting of the Clear River Energy Center, I think is also very important. But I also implore that the Greater City Council looks into the public records request that Erica Scott made. There's some really important information there that I've actually brought to the attention of the Rhode Island EFSB, because there are questions of who is this power plant attorney, what are the timelines, and so I would really appreciate it if you did, to the extent that you are legally, obtain every single piece of information that is available, despite an administration giving difficulties to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia. We're now on borrowed time because we're beyond the hour and a half.
Can I just say?
No, not until everyone else has had a chance, and
No.
you are next.
Okay, my name is Melody O'Brien. I come from Newport, Rhode Island. I lived on Aquinic Island my whole life and was always taught the importance of water. Water is a main substance that we make revenue off of on the island. I'm also an activist that went to Standing Rock, and I will bring to the table the words that we echoed there, Mini Wachoni, which means water is life. Do not, please do not sell your water to run a facility that is going to cause and is continually fueled by death. It's not feasible to understand. I will be, in 40 years, I'm going to be 80 years old. Think about where all of you will be in 40 years and how much pollution this facility is going to put into our environment during the next 40 years. I stand here for not only my child, but my child's child and my children's children and grandchildren, because we have to think 7 generations ahead. If we don't, there's nothing going to be left for them. We are borrowing this planet from our children. And if we continue to use death to create energy and not look into renewable, clean energy, there's nothing that's going to be left. Think about what's happened in Flint, Michigan. Is your city willing to put that kind of jeopardy into selling water to a company that's going to fuel a power plant and then something happen to your water? And the children of Fall River end up with lead poisoning and sick because your water now becomes contaminated and you sold clean water to a power company. Really think about the death that this is going to cause. I understand the city of Fall River looks at it as profit. I come from Newport. They wouldn't even sign a resolution against this because, as my mayor said, if it doesn't make money for the city of Newport, it's not relevant to the city of Newport. Water is relevant. This is relevant. Healthy drinking water is relevant. And to be able to sell it to a place that is going to affect all of us, it's really disheartening that it would even be brought to the table. Thank you very much for your time. And again, I will say Mini Wachoni, and water is life. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. My name is Mike Lemro. I'm from Burrillville as well. Just a couple of points. I think a lot of people already covered a lot of the topics that I normally would have addressed. But I think as you start learning more of the picture, when you first see the water deal on its own, it probably seems like a good deal, almost too good to be true. But then you start peeling back the layers and you start understanding some history of the water deals that already fell through, and you start wondering, why are we here? Why am I an hour away from my home where the potential source of water for this plant is? The city that my kids know as the home of the battleships, not the home of the water for our power plant. Something doesn't seem to add up. You peel back the layer a little bit more and you realize you're dealing with a company that in 2016 Moody downgraded to a B1 rating with a negative outlook, and they reaffirmed that again November of this year. So is that the type of company that you want to do business with? In short, I guess a couple things that I think would be wise for you to consider. Your residents gave you some good advice to look into pursuing intervenor status. I think you can get a lot of good information so you can really wrap your head around this. The other thing is, and I don't know all the details around the actual contract itself. I heard earlier your first payment is in March. It's a 3-year deal. I don't know if March means that's when the deal starts. I don't know if the plant's going to be functional in 3 years. There's a show cause meeting on January 30th when they now need to prove whether or not they need to go forward with the plant at all. So I would wonder what would happen if March is really the start of the contract. If the plant isn't built, do you have to extend, and that's your second term of your 3 extensions that you have, or is that really the start? So I think there's some questions around that you really need to understand how that impacts Fall River. But to me, I would really encourage you to follow through and see what other information you get and really understand what you're getting yourself into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. You have a mic right there.
Oh. Lorraine Savard, Central Falls, Rhode Island. Everything's kind of been said, so I'm going to be short. I'm a little offended from the reaction from the judge, being offended because we're saying there seems to be some shenanigans here. because, and maybe there's not, but Invenergy has a track record, a very bad track record, trying to get water. And this is no different, It was minimally advertised. There's some problems with dates. And the fact that you got really upset is a question. End of story. I don't want to rebuttal.
You have the floor, so you continue to speak.
I'm done. I'm done.
Thank you, Lorraine. And I think, is the young man speaking?
Yes.
Yes, just pull that microphone right up to you and tell us your name.
Devin O'Brien, Newport, Rhode Island. I just simply want to say that if there is pollution, that you guys should be very concerned about that, because we don't want the water to be polluted and CO2 emissions going into the air and heating up the earth, and there's so much gas in the air that we have to wear gas masks at the beach because there's so much gas in the air. I just simply want to tell you guys to please don't accept this. Please think of the consequences that will go into accepting this. Thank you.
Thank you. So everyone has had an opportunity to speak. If there's any immediate reaction from any of my colleagues in city government, I would entertain them. Otherwise, I would excuse you all, and thank you for your input. Yes, Councilor.
Is it possible for us to say something very quickly?
Yeah, I just said, if anyone wishes to say anything, now's a good time to say it.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and I know that professional staff and yourselves have taken time out of your day to hear everyone, and I'll keep this very brief. We approached the city of Fall River as a contingent water supply, really for two reasons. One is that Fall River has an ordinance that allows for out-of-city purchases. There's actually a rate, so Ben Water could come into the city and purchase water at Bedford Street at any time. However, we wanted a contract. The city in the past, from our research, has done intermunicipal contracts. They supply municipalities in Rhode Island. So we simply approached the people in Fall River and asked, would you be interested in doing a contract? And the answer was at unacceptable terms. We negotiated those terms. I think this gentleman right here asked a good question. What happens on March 1st if the plant's not approved and Ben Water doesn't pay? Then the contract gets terminated. So if you look at the first page of the contract.
I'm going to ask you just to clarify that,
Yeah.
because I understood that we got this money regardless, and you're saying if the plant is disapproved and the contract is void?
No.
Say
If
that
we don't
again.
make payments, I think this gentleman asked what happens if payments are not made if the plant's not approved. If we don't make payments, then the city can terminate the contract. It doesn't terminate because of non-approval. The other thing is I'd ask the city to look at the first, not the city, but Mr. Chairman and the committee to look at the first page of the contract. And what that says is that Ben's in the business of providing water to landscapers, to fill pools, to supply construction projects, irrigation, industrial processes. They do 5 to 8 million gallons a year. They have a number of other supply sources. They are the contingent water supply source for this. That's been filed with the EFSB. You've heard that term. They needed a reliable source to backstop not only the supply to the project, but their other business. And that's the reason for the contract. The plant is going to undergo its own regulatory process. So you heard somebody mention it's been going on for 2 years. That will continue. The water supply agreement is a water supply agreement that you would provide to anybody else. And working with staff in the city, everybody was extremely professional, and nothing was done to collude with anyone.
Just one last question before I give to my colleague. What is the cost that your company receives for sale of a truckload of water?
It's a direct pass-through.
What's that?
The water cost?
Yes.
You mean if we buy it from City of Fall River at 1.2 cents
I know
a
what
gallon?
the cost. I know what your cost is from the city of Fall River.
Right.
What do you get from Invenergy for a truckload of water?
I don't remember what the price is, but it's a pass-through for the water. We get paid for the logistics and the hauling.
Right, so you don't have an answer to my question.
Right.
Okay. Counselor Camara, do you have any questions?
No.
I just make that short.
Okay, just to grab the mic and one last comment.
I would just like to say that Ben's Water is delivering to pools and that, not all the way to Burrillville in the middle of the wintertime. There's a big difference between filling pools and yardmen and workmen out there in the field or a road structure that needs water compared to running back and forth every day. And they saying 18 trucks a day, that's 36 times in and out. It's a big difference there. That's only common sense.
Just let me ask
Thank
you
you.
a question.
Counselor
Based on
Camara?
what this gentleman just said, do we have to sell them water every day? Or just when needed?
First, at the maximum load, it's 11 trucks maximum per day.
So according to him, it's
No.
22 back and forth, using his math. They gotta come and arrive. and leave.
Trips, yes.
Okay.
But pickups, maximum 11, anticipated 0 to 3.
So it could be zero.
Yes.
So we could sell them no water for 3 weeks. Like he said, wintertime, freezing, they're not doing any construction,
We
no
could sell,
landscapers are working,
we could
no
sell
pools are
them
being
no
filled.
water for the entire year.
We could sell them no water. Okay. And if they don't get permitted, we're not gonna sell them any water. If they don't go through with anything, we're not gonna sell them.
Well, Ben certainly
Ben will
could
use it
purchase
for-
water
so-
for their
for their
other
landscaping
customers,
uses.
like our other
So
pool.
chances are, we could be selling Ben water that has nothing to do with this plant going forward.
It's possible.
Okay. With that, I yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I think everyone's had a chance to speak. I'll ask everyone then to be excused from the table so the council can deliberate and decide what it seeks to do. Thank you.
You need it.
So, Counselor, do you have a, thank you, Ben, an interest in any motion? I would suggest that we at least become a request to be a late intervener so that we can be kept abreast of this issue, getting permits. So would you agree to a motion to submit to the EFSB
I think we should do, Counselor.
a request to be a late intervener?
Being a two-member committee that I've never been a part of in my life, not knowing that people were on this committee and not on this committee, the best thing to do, I think, would be to table this so that the president can assign someone else to it. And if they're going to go forward, whatever they're going to do, we need to come back as a three-member body. Has always been the three-member committees on here. We can address it again, Council. We can bring it back before the committee and address it.
Okay, well, I can appreciate the council's perspective on that. You know, this is, although we have operated, I'm sure you have as well, operated as a two-person committee
How long has it
at
been two
various
people
times.
committee? I mean, I don't know
No, not as a two-person committee, but two people that serves as a quorum for a committee.
Correct.
So we've done that before, so, but it would be necessary if we're going to move anything to move it and adopt it. I think that one of the things that we could do that really is very simple, it doesn't take a position one way or the other, it's to sign on as a late intervener.
I agree, Councilor.
So
Maybe if the
let
committee
us at
wants to
least do
When
that.
we have a three-member committee, right now I'm gonna make a motion to table it, and that does the same thing that you wanna do. It doesn't take a position, but let this council deal with three members that can talk about exactly what we wanna go forward, not two members. We didn't need three members, as you said, to someone to be added to have this meeting tonight. We had a quorum with two. You knew I was gonna be here. You asked me, I said yes. So I don't wanna go any further other than make that motion to table it.
Okay, well, I won't second the motion to table until I've had a chance to make a comment, so let me just do that.
I don't think you can make a motion on the table.
Is that,
There's no discussion on the table.
there is not a second. So before I entertain a second to table, I would just like to make a comment, and it really is a comment of appreciation to those who came forward, regardless of where they live on either side of the border. There is no more important issue in our time than climate change, and there is no more important issue than to seek alternatives to fossil fuels to generate energy. Whether it's the fires that exist in California, or the floods that have existed around our country and throughout the world, or it's the fact that we're living in a decade where it's been the hottest decade in history, we are in trouble as a planet. We are in trouble as a country, and we're in trouble as a local community if we don't do everything that we can to think globally, to think how we can produce a better planet, but to act locally. And the way to act locally is to stop the addiction that we have to fossil fuels. So I am totally comfortable with being an ally to those environmentalists that have spoken today. Not because I don't want to see more money in our city coffers, I certainly do. And I'm willing to allow the 3-year contract to exist, but I will submit to the future council, which takes office the first week in January, a request to a resolution that we not renew any contract to sell our precious commodity, water, to any entity that is pursuing the development of a fossil fuel plant. This is a fossil fuel plant that is utilizing fracked oil and also diesel fuel to operate, both of which are detrimental to our survival. I cannot justify, as a human being, the support of something that is detrimental to our health and safety, because I was elected not only to uphold the Constitution, but particularly to support policy that future generations can become a part of, a planet that is safer than the planet that we've inherited. And by doing what the Water Board has done, and by continuing to support fossil fuel plants, after we've done so much as a community to transfer out of our environment, our immediate environment, both 2 power plants across the river that were dirty plants, one of which was the dirtiest plant of the top dirty 5 in New England, the dirtiest of the top 5. So we've done a lot to improve our environment here. How can we, on one hand, do so much to improve our environment locally, and then on the other hand, to support the destruction of the environment in nearby Rhode Island? It's unconscionable to me as a human being that cares about our local community and our global community, and I'm disappointed that we're not able to move forward tonight. I think it's a dereliction of having a 3rd member. The original 3rd member was unable to come to the meeting. I did request of the council president that we get a 3rd member because I thought this issue was important enough that we not be stalemated on a 1-to-1 vote. But that was not the case because that replacement chose to resign today. However, the council is in the dilemma of not being stalemated. So this will be tabled tonight, and upon the convening of a new council in January, the issue will assuredly be brought back for further action. So I will entertain the motion to table.
I didn't make the motion.
Are you making that motion?
Do you want me to? Anything else to say?
Do you have anything else you'd like to say? Okay. We can move to table this matter, or we can move to adopt some order. Do you have any suggestions?
A lot of things. Motion to table.
Okay, the motion's made to table, second. The matter is tabled.
Didn't vote on it.
No applause? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Now we
So
vote on
voted.
it.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion to adjourn is adopted. Thank you.
You have been watching the Fall River City Council meetings, a service of Fall River Government Television and the City of Fall River. Catch any meeting online at www.frgtv.us video on demand.